Welcome back to Echo. Last we saw, Chase had asked Flynn to take him to the mines, but before that we had the ever so infamous party for Carl, which again didn't end so well. Even though Flynn was trying his best to be on his best behavior, but I guess everybody's just on his case this time around. But anyways, let's continue and see what happens. I stared through the bars of rebar into the darkness of the old mine. There's a damp, cool breeze coming from inside, but all I can smell is dirt. Yep, beautiful ain't it? Might as well just slap that mine jail on our flag. Represents the town pretty good. Flynn leans against the truck, chewing on another one of his toothpicks. There's an unsettling feeling about this whole place, and I'm kind of glad Flynn is with me because of it. It's a good 3 miles from the town center, and the gravel road is deserted. Our only company is a few crumbled ruins and a foundation scattered every 20 feet or so. The only sign of modernity is an oddly placed long patch of asphalt and 2 tall lampposts at the ends of it. The town had tried to turn the area into a tourist destination a decade ago, but the recession put a hard stop to that. It seems to be a running theme in this town's history, progress halted by outside forces. Don't you have some say in that? I mumble absent-mindedly, messing with the settings on the camera. No. I'm a clerk. I just mess with records and shit. It's still hard for me to imagine Flynn working in the position. Shouldn't you be there now? It's still before 5. Maybe, but why bother? What? He looks up at me, toothpick bobbing around in his mouth, eyes wide as he shrugs. What, you think anyone's gonna notice? I get paid to do nothing. But won't you get fired? It's an elected position. Well, unelected then? It goes unchallenged every year, Chase. I frown. Doesn't Flynn have any sense of duty? Flynn takes the toothpick out of his mouth and stabs in my direction. Hey, I didn't bring you here to get lectured about how I do my job. I've been doing it for the past 3 years. Flynn shoves the toothpick back in his mouth. Anyway, I was kidding. I'm part-time. I get my shit done, then I leave. I set the camera on the tripod and look through the lens. Don't me. There's a good amount of satisfaction I get out of teasing Flynn. I mean, your cousin, or whatever, is the mayor, right? My aunt is, and so what? Isn't that nepotism or something? Flynn sighs heavily behind me. Elected. Alright, it just seems kinda, I don't know, like, not a good thing. As I film, I hear him really starting to grumble behind me, so I try to change the subject. Well, it's good to see you're still not smoking anymore. The toothpicks helping? Not right now, they're not. Flynn had smoked since he was a freshman in high school. I distinctly remember him offering me cigarettes when I was like 14. He always gets pissed off if I remind him about that. I pick up the camera and move it to a different angle. Well, maybe you could give Leo a few pointers. He doesn't say anything, and I close my eyes when I remember what just happened with the wolf. I film for another minute, then turn around to face him. I'm sorry about what happened. Flynn doesn't look at me, instead choosing to stare out into the desert. Why? You didn't do anything. But I could have, and this project is why we're here in the first place, isn't it? Flynn sighs and finally looks up at me, his eyes all the more piercing under the bright sunlight. You know, one thing I can't stand is people apologizing over nothing. I frown. What does that mean? Yeah, you can apologize, but in the end, all it's doing is making you feel better while fixing nothing. I glare at him, feeling my face get hot, even more than it is in the desert heat. He shrugs and leans back against the car, head tilted back and eyes shut against the sun. I stalk over to stand in front of him, and I can see a smile playing at the edges of his muzzle. Man, fuck you! On the last word, I jab a finger into his stomach. His eyes fly open and he grunts loudly, doubling over. Jeez, Chase! I fucking stayed in this shithole for you while everyone else is having fun, and this is the thanks I get? Oh, you stayed behind just for me? Flynn stays curled up, rubbing his stomach. His face is inches from mine, and he's still got that stupid grin on his face. You're an asshole. Aw, Chase, my heart. He clutches at his chest dramatically. More like your stomach. I poke at it again, but he reacts too quickly, his Lilith torso bending out of the way. You can't keep your hands off me, can you? I just fold my arms, glaring at him. Flynn finally straightens up, looking around. Well, I'm not going to do a repeat of yesterday. I've got a house, you know. Is he talking about how we fooled around yesterday, and that he invited me back home to his house? Or more specifically, his bedroom? I swallow. I don't want to look too eager, like that's the only reason I stayed behind. You know, I am a little hungry. You want to go out and get something first? Flynn snores as he gazes down at me. What, from the diner? You know how that fucks me up. I think. You said you'd cook for me a few days back. Flynn sighs, rubbing a hand behind his head. What is this, some kind of date? Well, you said you'd prefer dinner first before. I trail off as Flynn raises an eyebrow at me. I said a drink. We can have that too. Flynn looks off into the desert again, thinking. Fine, but I'm gonna get you back for that poke. I smirk. Yeah, what? As he turns away from me, his tail catches in and knocks against my crotch. It wasn't that hard, but it's enough to make me feel it in the bottom of my stomach. Oh, fuck, come on. I walk bow-legged for a few seconds as I move to gather up my equipment. I don't think that was an equal exchange. That's 'cause you ain't a lizard. Now hurry your ass up. Flynn's house is a ranch-style adobe home. He moved here only a few years ago, so it's my first time seeing it. It's an alright place. Housemate's quiet and keeps to himself, so it's almost like I have it all to myself. You got a housemate? Well, yeah. Don't need the whole house. Saves a decent amount of money, too. We pull in next to a kind of foreign-looking faded yellow scooter. He's new to Echo. You'll probably like him. Big fucking nerd. I hop out, the pavement warm against my pads even though the sun is setting. It looks nice, kind of like a smaller version of Carl's house. Carl's mansion, you mean? On the way up to the door, I feel his thick tail bump against my own, though it's soft enough that I'm not sure if it's on purpose. As we go inside, I'm hit with a blast of warm air that's not much different from what's outside. I air on my shirt. Flynn notices and chuckles. Sorry, but you better get used to it if you want to hang out around with the Gilla. As I follow Flynn into the kitchen, the smell is a bit strange as well. Kind of like sagebrush, which isn't a bad thing at all. That you, Flynn? Yeah, I have a friend over. Oh, one of your reunion friends? Flynn opens the fridge. We have any green peppers left? I hear a sliding door from the hallway and turn around to a somewhat startling sight. A tall lizard comes in, but it's not his height that surprises me, but rather his coloring, spotted blue with pale eyes. I then realize it's a salamander, not a reptile. I suppose I'd seen brightly colored amphibians in Pueblo, but definitely not Echo, not even in Peyton. There's a smile on his face and I try hard not to stare. Dax, this is Chase. Hello, Chase. Hi. I reach out to his offered hand before feeling the cool, almost slippery sensation of his skin. Yeah, sorry, I know you guys ain't used to salamanders around here. I cringe inwardly as I realize he'd caught me staring like a dumbass. Oh, no, I don't mind. Mind? Me being a salamander? I'm mortified, but I'm still smiling. Alright, Chase, enough making a fool out of yourself. Flynn is tossing ingredients onto the counter. Pepper, cheese, eggs. He can't help it if he's not used to it. Well, he's always bragging about going to college. Sometimes it serves you better if you just get out more. I'm not sure what to say at this point, but Dax saves me from having to try. Oh, please. Daxton sits next to me on a stool, that warm smile still plastered on his face. Yeah, Flynn here was trying to sweet-talk a hyena a few months back. I see Flynn tense up before he turns around, pointing a knife threateningly at the salamander. Don't you dare. Refer to him as a canine. Like, isn't that something basic you learned in school? Wow, Flynn. Really? Flynn turns back around with a huff. Sometimes you forget shit. He's trying to play it off, but I can see the frills on his back of his head flaring out. He didn't care anyways, we fucked, so fuck off. Daxton rolls his eyes before getting up and airing out his shirt like I did earlier. Well, I'm going back to my side of the house. It's friggin' sauna over here. He pats me on the shoulder as he pauses. Nice meeting you, Chase. I watch as he heads back down the hall, sliding to shut the door. It's colder on his side of the house? Yeah, dual habitat residence. I look longingly over at Dax's side of the house. Get your ass over here so I can teach you how to cook something. The next hour is surprisingly fun, even though half of the time it's spent with Flynn yelling at me about how wrong I'm doing stuff. He calls it chiles rellenos, peppers filled with cheese and meat and covered in eggs before being fried. I have to agree with Flynn that it's way better than the diner food, even though the food over there is still pretty good. When we finish, Flynn dumps the dishes into the sink with a clatter before snatching me up by the arm. Hey! Shut up, Chase! I frown, but allow myself to be dragged down the hallway to what I presume is the lizard's room. It's small and simple, but what I'm most focused on is a fairly large bed. He pulls me in to make room to shut the door before pressing me back against it and kissing me full on the mouth. I open my mouth the moment his tongue prods at my lips. I'm not used to the feeling of something so thin and flexible sliding into my mouth, but it's not a bad feeling. His long tongue is easily entangled with my smaller one. At the same time, his hands grab the bottom of my shirt and pull it up over my head, breaking our kiss. As I lean back against the wall, Flynn's eyes play over my body, clearly drinking it in. I narrow my eyes. Hey, you've already seen me naked. I reach forward, undoing his belt with quick, jerky movements. Flynn doesn't resist and instead just stands there, smirking down at me. I give him a smirk in return as I rest my hands on his hips before slowly sliding them down, pushing his pants down with them. As his tail slides out the rear, I move my hands around to feel his ass as the pants slide further down. His thick tail twitches in response before I squeeze his soft rear, earning a gasp from the lizard. I'm so preoccupied with this backside that I almost forget the front. That's when the pants finally drop to the floor and I find myself face to face with Flynn's cock. I almost go cross-eyed staring at the tapered tip. I hear the lizard chuckle above me as he sways his hips, bobbing his length in front of my nose. What's that face? It's like you've never seen a dick before. I clamp my muzzle around it, edging on Flynn's teasing. His hands immediately go to my head, steadying himself as he finally shuts up. I take it all in, almost gagging at the length. Leo is the only other guy I've ever blown, and he's basically the opposite compared to Flynn. While he was shorter and thicker, what's in my mouth now is long and thin. I start to bob my head back and forth, suddenly feeling self-conscious, worried that a pro like Flynn might see me for the complete amateur that I am. His reaction, though, says otherwise. He grunts and groans, hips bucking and pressing into my mouth each time I pull back. I look up to his face and I'm surprised to see him looking right back down at me. His eyes are slits, his mouth hanging open as he gasps. I blush and look back down, focusing instead on his Lilith stomach, his faint abs standing out just a bit more with each thrust. For the next 5 minutes, the only sound is gasping breaths from the lizard and the occasional thump on my head against the door. Flynn breathlessly apologizes each time. As it goes on, though, I can feel the muscles in his legs starting to tense up. Fuck, it's coming. Do you want me to pull out? Flynn must be pent up. It always took Leo at least 10 minutes before he came from a blowjob, if at all. I feel Flynn tense and start to step back, but I slide my hands up to his thighs, squeezing his ass again, keeping him firmly in place. If Flynn is still trying to pull back, he runs out of time because I feel his length jump in my mouth. Oh, fuck! Flynn doubles over me sharply, his head slamming against the door as I take him in all the way and start sucking. His thin body shakes against me, and I try not to smirk as I feel his clawed feet brush my knees as they dance around in ecstasy. I glance up at him again and see the top of his head and a hand pressed to the door. His eyes are squeezed shut and his teeth are bared as he hisses through them. His other hand is gripping tightly into my head fur, and with each suck, he grips tighter. After about 3 spurts, his twitching dick finally settles on my tongue. While Flynn is definitely quicker to come, he isn't quite as much as Leo. He isn't quite as much as Leo, so I have no trouble getting it all down. I see his stomach rise and fall in front of me as he sags and gasps against the door. Oh fuck, Chase. I don't know what you did, but fucker. In the middle of his sentence, I give his softening cock another suck. He yanks my head back with a hand on my head, his slick dick bobbing out from my mouth. I grin, but then gasp as I'm yanked up to my feet. Flynn turns me towards the bed, made difficult with my pants around my ankles, and shoves me backwards onto the mattress. He grins at me as he slides his shirt back over his shoulders. Now's your turn. I lay on my side, head on Flynn's chest while his arm is wrapped around me, his head stroking my shoulder. I rub his smooth stomach in big, white circles, making sure to get every inch of it. I occasionally trace the outline of his chest as it rises and falls before dipping down low, almost touching his semi-erect cock. He doesn't seem to be in the mood for another go, though, so I'm just content to just lay there and listen to his deep breaths. What's wrong with me wanting to know what happened? I pause in my rubbing, resting my paw in the middle of his stomach. He tenses it for a second, so I continue the rubbing. Nothing. I guess it's how you go about doing it. He grunts. Doesn't matter how I do it. He's gonna get upset. Might be easier if you try to go at it more delicately. Flynn takes a deep breath, and I watch my hand rise and fall with it. He's hiding something. You know it. I don't say anything. We lay like that for a while. Flynn's breathing softly into my ear as his fingers creep over my arm to tease at a nipple. Everyone does, but they treat me like I'm just some sort of monster for wanting to know. I press down suddenly, and he grunts loudly into my ear as he tenses up against my hand again. You don't really think what you did at the river was appropriate? Ow! I cringe as Flynn pinches my nipple. He doesn't say anything, though, and we lay in silence for a while longer. Sydney didn't deserve that. I swallow. No. I mean, I know he was a dick, but he came from a rough place. I just listen, not wanting to say something wrong. Flynn never opened up about this. You guys didn't know him like I did. I stop rubbing and turn my head to look up at Flynn. His eyes are open, staring up at the ceiling. Chase, I need to find out what happened. Flynn. No, I'm sick of wondering. I'm sick of imagining. He looks down at me suddenly, and the expression on his face is strange. I'm gonna talk to him again. Who? TJ? I hear my voice rise in concern. He doesn't say anything. Flynn. I sit up. Don't do that. He glares at me. Yeah, why not? This is probably the last chance I'll get. But I try to think of something to say. Nothing good would come out of it. If he hasn't said anything until now, then he probably never will. We'll see about that. The implications in his voice sends a chill down my spine. Flynn! The lizard looks away from me. What? I'm not gonna do anything. Just talk. And if he doesn't say anything? Flynn stares at the wall. Then I guess that's it. But I want to talk with him without Leo there to coddle him like he's some sort of little kid. I pull my face in my hands and slowly rub. I know Flynn would never hurt TJ, but he can get so emotional, and what if TJ says the wrong thing? Just let me go with you when you do. Flynn turns his head to look back at me. Why? I just want to be there to keep things grounded. Flynn stares hard at me. Maybe. He likes you, so maybe that will be good. He continues to stare at me, and I feel a little uncomfortable. What? You just have to promise one thing. What? I say it a bit more slowly. Don't get in the way. Don't try to defend him, even if he's acting all sad and shit. I look back at him, unsure of what to say. I don't want TJ to get hurt, and just the thought of this confrontation is making me feel sick. But I don't want him to be alone when this happens either. The thought of telling one of the others, Jenna or Leo, comes to mind, but I know that would be a fucking catastrophe if I do. That would be the end of a lot of friendships. This still left a chance that they would survive. Either way, I'm going to have to promise him if I want a chance to go along. But whether or not I keep that promise... I'd say tell the truth and get beat up. I promise, but only if it doesn't get physical. Flynn's eyes narrow. What? He continues to stare at me like he's trying to see something behind me. What? I'm not lying. Flynn gives me his signature snort and closes his eyes again. It won't. I look at him, skeptical, deciding not to remind him about what happened at the river. I sigh and stare at my naked balls for a moment, feeling a little strange. I'm going to go to the bathroom, maybe take a shower. All right. I get up on unsteady feet and head into the hallway, wondering if I should try. What's wrong with you? It's Thursday. If I recall, something bad is about to happen. I open my eyes blearily, waking up to the sound of something pounding in the distance. Yep, here it comes. I stare at the ceiling for a moment, then abruptly prop myself up on my elbows, looking around, confused. Where the hell? Oh yeah, Flynn's room. I'd fallen asleep on Flynn's bed, naked after I'd taken a shower. Turns out the lizards don't have dryers, so I was left to air dry. I was tired, so Flynn had let me lay on his bed on a few towels, and that's where I am right now. Guess I fell asleep. Again, the pounding. I look over to my right and see Flynn curled up, his back facing me. I think he's naked as well for a moment, then I see he's got boxer briefs on, the black color blending into his skin. I reach over to poke the rough skin of his scaly back. The frills on his back of his neck frill out for a second, then lay back down. I almost do it again, but Flynn's grumpy, annoyed as hell tone stops me. What? I clear my throat. Sorry, but it sounds like... I don't have to say it because the pounding starts back up again, echoing up the hallway. What the fuck? Flynn pushes himself up to a sitting position, squinting at the hallway through the door. What time is it? Flynn rolls off his bed and starts putting on a shirt. I grab my phone, glad to see that it's still half charged. It's 9. At the same time, I notice that I have text. Several of them. From Leo. Gee, I wonder why. Shit. What? Flynn hops around the room as he tries to pull on some pants. My eyes scan over the text, realizing who it likely is that's knocking at the door. The message started about 2 hours ago. Hey, I was at the motel and you weren't there. Jenna says that she doesn't know where you are either. She says you didn't spend the night there. You and Flynn are the only ones not answering my messages. Are you at his house? Hello? I feel my stomach start to go into a knot. Fuck. Flynn whirls on me, annoyed, now fully dressed. The knocking has stopped, but I'm still uneasy about what I've just found out. I think it's Leo. What? This time Flynn sounds panicked. He's been texting me all morning. He thinks I'm here now. I show Flynn my screen, but he barely looks at it. He's got his arms folded, his mind clearly racing. You know he can't find out that I've spent the night here. I try to keep my voice under control. I know. Yeah, we both know. Things are basically over between Leo and I. But that doesn't change the fact that this will bring up all kinds of problems in our little friend group. Flynn paces for a few seconds, then turns back to me. Well, he's gone now. I can just get Carl to say that you spent the night at his. He already texted Carl. Shit! Flynn groans and hangs back his head. Well, did he ask him if you spent the night there? No, just that he didn't know where I am. At least, that's what his text said. I'll just tell him I don't know and Carl can say you were there. Don't you think Carl would have to be told? Flynn suddenly reaches out, grabbing my shoulder and throwing me sideways onto the bed. I stare at him, wide-eyed, but he's not looking at me. Instead, he's staring at the window behind me. What? He throws his hands onto my face, silencing me. Flynn moves to the window, and that's when I notice a big shadow shifting around out there. I scramble to the other side of the bed, heart hammering in my chest. Did he see me? The curtain is covering most of the window, but the foot-long gap in the end is just enough to look in. Flynn starts pantomiming in front of the window, shrugging his shoulders and shaking his head. Finally, he drops his arms in a sigh and leans to the crack in the window. What the hell are you doing? Why the hell didn't you answer your door? Leo's voice is angry, honestly a lot more angry than I would have expected, despite the situation. I just woke up. I was knocking for like 5 fucking minutes. I'm a heavy sleeper. You're dressed and everything. I just got dressed. Most people don't go peeking into windows when they don't get an answer, though. Flynn glares through the window. I quietly roll off the bed so I can hide better, even if I'm not in view of the window from here. Listen, I'm just looking for Chase. Have you seen him? No. Flynn shifts his position a bit in my direction as if trying to block Leo's view. Looking for something? Yeah, Chase. Well, he ain't here. Why would he be? He stayed behind with you at the party, didn't he? Yep, then ran off to do some project or something. There's a long pause. Puchika. Can I come in for a second? I need a drink. What? Go back to your house, man. You saying you don't want me to come in? Flynn sighs loudly, rubbing his eyes. I'm saying I'm tired. It's 10 in the fucking morning. It's 9, but yeah, sometimes I stay up late. Why? Flynn lowers his hand from his eyes and glares out at Leo. Listen, I'm not really in the mood for this right now. Another long pause. You're acting a little crazy right now, too. Listen, I'll be on my way if I can just come in for a little bit. I'm fucking burning up. I see Flynn push his forehead against the glass, eyes closed, frustration written all over his face. All right, a glass of water, then get out so I can go back to sleep. Fine. With that, Flynn closes the window, watching it for a while before sighing loudly again. All right, stay here. Got it? If he knows you're here, we both know he'll kill us both. Yeah. All right, if for whatever reason he comes back here, hide under the fucking bed if you have to. With that, Flynn turns and heads out the door into the hallway. The last thing he said has me feeling like shit. Sneaking around behind Leo's back like this is wrong, even if I know telling him about it would be worse. It's my fault that Leo can't get over our relationship. I have the right to do what I want. Right? I sigh and press my forehead into the bed, much like Flynn had pushed his head against the window. Staring at my crotch, that's when I realize I'm still naked. I look up, listening. I hear the front door open, followed by some distant mumbling from Leo. If I sneak into the bathroom real quick, I can grab my clothes. Maybe stay there until Leo leaves. At least that way it won't look so bad if he finds me for whatever reason. I get up and pad quickly to the hall, listening. I can hear some clinking around the kitchen, then the murmur of some voices. The kitchen is practically out of sight from the hall, which leads to the living room. I stand there for a moment longer, tail twitching as I contemplate if this is a good idea or not. The moment I hear Leo's voice coming from the kitchen area again, I quickly tiptoe the short distance to the bathroom. Despite not having come close at all at being caught, my heart still hammers in my chest. The voices continue to mumble in the kitchen as I start looking around for my clothes. They're folded neatly on the counter and I quickly snatch them up. Pretty sure I wouldn't. Smell on you. I catch a few words from Leo that makes my ears perk. Something about smell? Leo smells a lot of things. He has a canine's nose. My eyes widen. Did he smell me on Flynn? I'm pretty sure Flynn hasn't showered since what we did yesterday. My heart rate picks up again as I feel my knees wanting to give out. Where the fuck are you going? This time I do hear Flynn and I know exactly what he means. The only problem is that I'm still naked in the fucking bathroom. Should I lock the door? Then Leo would definitely know someone's here and that it's probably me. Fuck! I mouth the words knowing that Leo would hear it if I said it now. I hear heavy footsteps coming up the hall. I definitely can't go back out to the room and hide under the bed now. They don't keep coming towards the bathroom though. The movements become somewhat muffled again as they turn into Flynn's room. This is fucking crazy, Leo. As if Leo heard Flynn, he doesn't say anything. I anticipate the sound of Leo ripping up Flynn's room, but I guess he isn't that far gone because things do go quiet again. Then there's some pacing around along with heavy breathing. You realize I could call the cops, right? I hear the closet door open. I look around desperately, realizing that I don't have much time. The first thing I see is the shower curtain in the bathtub. It's a see-through blue color, so there's no way I can stand behind it and not be seen. I hear shifting around in the other room again, and their bickering becomes more clear as they step back into the hall. Panicking and practically numb with fear, I crouch down and pull open a cupboard under the sink. Amazingly, there are only a few bottles of cleaning solutions, leaving plenty of room for me to squeeze in. As quietly as I can, I crawl into the opening. Reaching back out, I pull the door closed, setting my other hand against it as I do, so that it doesn't spring shut. Everything goes dark and their voices become muffled once again. I back up against the very back of the enclosure, hugging my knees as I try to keep my breathing quiet. It's actually a little while before they come into the bathroom, and I almost jump as Leo's voice booms in the small space. His smell is all over your fucking house. Then he should probably shower more. There's a small silence, and I imagine that Leo just gave him a look that shattered any surly confidence he might have had. Like I said, he was here for like an hour yesterday. And why didn't you fucking tell me that earlier? Because I knew you'd be acting like this, seriously. Their footsteps shift again in time with their voices muffling. I dare to let out a little sigh of relief. I can still hear them arguing, but I don't really care enough. You pass through the cupboard door, into the bathroom. You follow the voices down the hall, into the kitchen. Leo is on his way out the door. He stops in front of it, turning back around to Flynn, who's following closely behind. You're really starting to piss me off, Flynn. And you're really starting to freak me out, Leo. All of that still doesn't explain why his smell is all over you. Flynn works his jaw for a moment, eyes narrowed. We roughhoused a little by the mine. By the mine. You know how we get sometimes, and it was really hot. Leo is shaking his head, like he's tired of listening to what Flynn has to say, like he's tired of everything. And then to have it mixed with that smell? Flynn throws his hands up, exasperated. I jerked off later, sorry, but this isn't really any of your business. You know, it kind of fucking is, since I planned out this entire fucking thing. Leo's starting to lose his temper again. You know this isn't like Leo at all. Calm down, Jesus. Maybe he went off to do more research or whatever. Said he wasn't done at the mine. At the mine. Leo's not listening anymore. He's looking to the side, staring at the wall, hackles raised. Listen, I'll drive around town real quick to see if I can find him before work, alright? Flynn, you know you ruined this whole thing for me, right? Thing? For you? What are you talking about? And I'll be fucking damned if I let you do it again. The anger and spite in Leo's face is scaring Flynn. Leo, what's going on? But Leo still isn't listening. The wolf turns sharply away, yanking open the door. Leo! Flynn reaches out, resting a hand on Leo's shoulders. But at that moment, the wolf throws an elbow back into Flynn so hard that the lizard is sent stumbling back several steps before falling to his knees. Flynn lets out a hoarse groan, but Leo ignores it, slamming the door shut on his way out. Flynn stays like that, doubled over on the carpet, making soft rasping noises before his breathing finally comes under control. He stays there for a while longer, absorbing what just happened, knowing that Leo isn't himself either. He also regrets doing anything with Chase. Finally, he looks up, right at you. You decide to leave. There's really no point to try and reason with him. It's been a while since you've been out alone like this. It feels good not to be attached. Something about that lizard, Flynn, is helping this happen. You have to deal with him later. As you continue to walk down the dirt road, you see him. It takes a while at first, because he's so far away. But then you see that thick tail waving back and forth as he approaches you. Can he see you? Probably. It's been a long time since you were attached. But these feelings, the thoughts, you can remember it like it was yesterday. The new one is better, a lot more quiet. At least, you made him quiet. It was easier to do then, with this one. He keeps walking towards you and you start to wonder if you should turn back. You always snap back eventually. Why not let this play out? Let's see how far this will go. Now that you're this close, you can see water dripping off his body. Even after all these years, finally you can make out his face. Angry. No, furious. Finally seeing you again. He doesn't like what you did, and who can blame him? He starts to run towards you. You finally stop walking. Waiting. He's on you in seconds, lunging, blunt claws and sharp teeth bared. I keep wondering if I should come out myself. The last time I heard any voices was like almost 5 minutes ago. Still, I realize that they could both be outside or something, and I don't want to come running out if Leo decides to come back in. So I wait, starting to feel sweaty in my cramped position, my nose twitching from the strong chemical smell. I'll probably have to take another shower. After another few minutes, I hear a soft padding up the hallway. I know it's Flynn, but I wait. Another few seconds of silence goes by before Flynn finally speaks. He's gone. So, how are we going to explain to Leo that Carl just forgot that I was there? I pull my shirt over my head, feeling kinda gross putting back on my musky shirt. Flynn stands in front of the dresser mirror, having just finished putting on his tie. He's currently picking at his scales with a pair of tweezers. Carl forgets everything, especially when he gets high, which is all the time. Flynn's been acting kinda distant after the whole Leo incident. It's not hard to imagine why. I'm feeling the same way. Leo almost probably finding out, had put a damper on our stupid excursions. It really put into perspective how immature we all were to begin with. Alright, so I'll say I spent the night at Carl's, then left in the morning to do some filming, then came back. Flynn had told me to text all of this to Carl before I go over there. The only response I'd gotten so far was a short, "What?" We don't got any other choices. I guess not. And Chase, we probably shouldn't do this anymore. Yeah, I know. Flynn glances at me through the mirror, then returns to picking at his skin. He clears his throat. I know this is kind of gross, but it's fine. We've all got our gross things to deal with. I can't go into work looking like this. I got snowed on. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't ever really get that bad, but... Flynn breaks off awkwardly as he goes back to his grooming. It's really weird seeing him this off, but again, it's not like it's unwarranted. I sit on the edge of the bed, texting Carl again to try and get him to at least partially understand what the plan is. After a couple of minutes, Flynn clears his throat again. Listen, Chase, you ever feel a bit, not yourself? I look up and see that the lizard is looking at me through the mirror again. He quickly turns his attention back to his picking. I don't know, like you're not fully in control of what you do? I frown. Is Flynn trying to get at something, explain his own actions? Does he feel he wasn't in control of what happened between us? No, at least I don't think so. Flynn finally puts down the tweezers and turns to me, leaning his rear against the dresser. So you've never felt like you're not yourself? Though I'm not totally sure as to what Flynn is getting at, I decide to humor him and think. I guess after what happened when we were kids, I didn't feel right. After Sydney? Yeah. I try to avoid talking about it directly, but Flynn doesn't seem to be bothered right now. You probably remember that I saw a therapist after, because I felt so different and it scared me. Flynn nods. Did they figure it out? Kind of. If I remember right, they said it was like a dissociative thing. What's that? Like, sometimes when something really traumatic happens, your mind sort of distances you from yourself to protect you. I shrug. Something like that. I'm not very good at psych stuff. I almost tell Flynn to ask Jenna, but of course, he can't. So, did they fix it? Not really, but I got used to it, I guess. Was like the new me. And you're okay with that? I shrug again. My therapist said that really traumatic things can change the way your brain works forever. You just learn to live with it. That doesn't sound good. No, but it's part of life. I think we all changed. Yeah. I don't go into details about how it got worse over time, the whole not feeling like myself. How I felt more and more like my personality was bleeding away, that I'm a completely different person now than I was 10 years ago. Because, in the back of my mind, I just wonder if that's what it's like to grow up. That you become less like you were as a kid. Happy, carefree, a complete douchebag. And turn into this hollow shell of that. I can still feel Flynn looking at me, so I decide to bring up something else that's just as uncomfortable, since we're already there. So, when are you planning to talk to TJ? Flynn's silent for only a second. Saturday, at the end of your trip. I'm not sure that's the best idea. It doesn't leave much time to make amends if things turn sour. Which they most definitely will. But then I guess that means we'll easily be able to leave just as soon as it's over. Okay. Flynn's still looking at me, so I abruptly stand up, putting my phone back into my pocket. Anyway, you ready to go? I don't want to make you late for work. Sure. Flynn's finally straightening up, walking across the room to grab his keys. I'm just glad to have somewhere to go now. Flynn's feeling off like this is one of the most awkward experiences I've ever had. Probably because he's usually so good at making things not awkward. So with that, Flynn takes me to Carl's house, dropping me off before heading to work. I sit quietly next to Carl on the couch as he plays his video games. It's some kind of first-person shooter that I've never seen before. You know, I'm not all that into shooters, but this one's pretty good. Yeah? I try to act interested as I browse through my phone. I've already texted Leo apologizing and telling him that my phone had died. It's weird how quickly this lie has gotten out of control. I'm making things up as I go at this point, and I'm amazed at how easy it is. Leo hasn't responded, and I doubt he believes any of it. It still gives us both room to pretend, though. Yeah, man, I think it's the sci-fi elements. I could never play one of those World War shooters. Same. Carl clicks around with the controller for a while longer. You alright? I sigh loudly, finally tearing my eyes away from my phone. Yeah, I'm good. Because you don't seem good. I don't respond to that, instead choosing to zone out to whatever's happening on the screen. What's with the whole story anyway? About you spending the night or whatever? I debate whether it's worth telling Carl or not. He'd go along with it either way, but keeping all of these secrets is starting to make me feel sick. Well, I spent the night at Flynn's. Leo found out I wasn't at the motel, so he came looking for me. Ah, shit. Did you and Flynn, I let the silence hang for a while. Carl snorts. Wow. Come on, Carl. No, I don't mind. It just seems kind of weird. How so? I feel myself get defensive. I'm not really into the mood to be judged by Carl. Yeah, he's cool and everything, but his life, let alone his sex life, doesn't exactly put him in a position to do so. Well, you just barely got here like 5 days ago and already... I sigh. You know how Flynn is? Yeah, I do. So, you shouldn't be surprised. But I mean, we've known him since we were kids. Just feels a little bit... Carl, I'm not really in the mood right now. Carl goes quiet for a few more minutes, the clicking buttons on his controller the only sound. It doesn't last long though. You know, I saw you guys at the river a couple days back. I saw you too. I saw you guys. Carl, I just said I'm not in the mood. Carl shrugs. Just saying, I already know. It's school. I keep quiet, hoping that will get Carl to drop his stupid subject already. It doesn't work. But I get why you gotta keep it from Leo like this. I pull my phone out to see if I've gotten a text from Leo yet. I haven't. Me and Leo, we don't hang out that much, though I think he tries to. He talks about you a lot. I try to ignore the guilt that's steadily building up inside me. Did you smoke today? Because you're being really talkative right now. I only ask because I don't smell it. Usually it's pretty strong. Actually, I had an edible this morning. Carl giggles for a long while after that. Oh, really? I massage my brow with a thumb and a forefinger. Normally, I get along great with Carl, especially when he's high. But after this morning, basically everything is getting on my nerves. I usually hate that shit, but I don't know. Guess I was just bored today. Those things shoot me into fucking space. Guess it explains why you won't shut up. Hey, am I pissing you off? I immediately regret what I just said as Carl puts the game on pause. No, I just had a stressful morning. Ah, with Leo? Carl starts the game back up, giggling again as he shoots a space marine in the face. Finally, a text from Leo. Good to know. And another one immediately follows. Let's hang out sometime soon. But you know, Flynn cares about you too. Yeah? I text Leo a quick affirmative, though I'm not really sure when that hangout is going to happen. Yeah, we didn't stop talking about you when we drove to the reservation. Really? That actually did seem really out of the ordinary. What the hell would Flynn have to say about me? Carl shrugs. Bunch of stuff. He wanted to buy you something from the reservation, but thought it might be too weird. Flynn, buying me a gift? That's kind of weird. For Flynn, I mean. I thought it was kind of cute. What else did he say? Carl seems to think hard while he continues to shoot the guys on the screen. He twists the controller this way and that, bumping into my shoulder each time. Said you seem like you've grown up a lot. That you're way different than you were as a teenager. Yep, real cute. Carl's tone seems slightly annoyed there, but I don't really care enough to ask about it. By the way, how's your project going? Being reminded that I have an entire project to do doesn't ease the knot that's formed in my stomach. Not that great. Still need to do a lot of film and research. What kind of research? Stuff about Echo. Like, history stuff? Yep. Carl plays a little while longer, then sets down his controller. My mom might have some Echo stuff in the cellar, but... He pauses. You know Flynn is like the records holder, right? The clerk? Yeah. I already know what Carl is getting at, and honestly, I want to kick myself for not thinking of it in the first place. Carl turns to me, a loopy grin on his face. Those edibles really do fuck with him. So, let's go get some records from him. Probably better than digging around in my basement. Well, yeah, we should, but I don't really know what to get. Don't worry about it, dude. I go down there to shoot the shit with him all the time. We can ask him. Things aren't exactly cool between Flynn and I right now, but it's something to do. I'm so behind on my project at this point, I don't have any excuses. We pull into the gravel parking lot in front of City Hall. The stucco structure looks a hell of a lot more weathered than I remember it. The tarp drapes on the roof, and one of the windows is blacked out with plastic. City Hall is probably the oldest building still standing in Echo. And from what I read on the county's website, it served as the town's post office back in the early 20th century. Before then, it was an outpost used as an intelligence operations center during the years leading up to the Mormon Rebellion. Government spies were planted in nearby settlements from Colville to Peyton and delivered their reports on potential agitators at this outpost. They actually kept a priest on hand to help reaffirm the spies' faith in the true word of Christ. It's weird to think that Sydney was the last Mormon I knew. Are you sure Flynn works here? I exit my car, watching Carl stare ahead. His eyes are half-lidded, the ram seeming to stare for miles beyond the building in front of us. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Alright. Carl doesn't move. Are you gonna come out? The ram blinks slowly, his maw starting to hang agape. He shifts his bloodshot gaze towards my torso. Nah, my parents would flip. He flops his wrist in front of him limply, his tone tinged with effeminacy. Of the car. Yeah, just give me a second. Carl reaches down, unscrewing the lid from his water bottle and taking a few hearty glugs. When Carl grabs the door's handle, he hesitates. After a moment, he looks at me. He's completely silent, sucking in his cheeks on one side. Carl? Finally, he speaks. I sort of agreed to come without considering that I'd be talking to anyone but you and the crew today, let alone the mayor and stuff. I'm still stoned as balls and I look like shit. He laughs some in his self-deprecating fashion, visibly sheepish despite the THC still flowing through him. I think I might just chill here in your car, with the air conditioning and Huygen tactics. He holds up his phone and I think I just barely spot the icon for it in his sea of other game apps. Carl does look high though. It doesn't appear any worse than he usually looks. Telling him that probably wouldn't do much for his confidence though. I'll let Carl stay in the car. That's probably a good idea, all things considered. You gonna be alright in there? I mean, if you start to sober up, feel free to come in. I could always use a hand. I'm good, man. He scoots back into the car seat some, leaning it back. You got me up way too early to be hanging out proper anyway. I'm usually asleep like 3 hours from now. You really sleep until 2 o'clock? Yeah. Jeez. Hey, don't judge me. You're the interloper here. I'm about to make a jab about where Carl learned a word that large, but reading his expression, it's evident he isn't in the mood. And honestly, neither am I. I toss him the car keys and they bounce gently off the rotund bulk of his torso before he scoops them up off the floor mat. I'm gonna head inside and ask for permission to film, then maybe go through some of the files inside if they let me. Carl grunts. They should. It's all like public records or something. Except for the aliens that crashed out here in the 40s, that's still classified Agent Hunter. A pang of nostalgia shoots through me as I catch on to what Carl's referencing, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. When we were little, Carl and I used to run around old church clothes and pretend to be G-men, hunting for aliens. H&H, Agent Hendrix and Agent Hunter. Our parents got so pissed off at us for playing in the dirt in black formal wear, but we were super into it. Carl even drew up a zine, sort of documenting the whole make-believe adventures. Eventually, Carl started getting really into superhero stuff and tried to segue our adventures into the Superwolf universe. I didn't like Superwolf at all, and after an argument where I called him too fat to be a superhero, we ended our imaginary adventures. God, I was such a dick. Before I can say anything further, Carl's setting his phone aside and popping open the glove box. Do you still have those black sunglasses? Oh man, no. Leo said that he liked them, so I gave him the pair I had. I do have a tortoiseshell pair in there somewhere. Isn't that kind of girly? Carl gives me a sidelong look as he withdraws the aforementioned pair, holding them up to me. What? Guys can wear tortoiseshell. It's not like they're polka dot or something. My mom wears these colored glasses all the time. I literally can't see these without picturing her. Well, like, that's your personal thing. No one else thinks that. He slides them onto his face. They rest somewhat awkwardly on his sizable snout, unable to settle in place neatly. Your nose is too big. Carl pulls the shades off his face, limply tossing them to the dash, leaning back into his seat with a long exhale. Well, do your thing. I'll be here. Right, be back soon, Carl. Yup. I turn, heading inside. Stepping into City Hall, the first thing I notice is how dry the air feels. It's like there's no ventilation to speak of. It makes me feel like I'm standing inside a really slow baking oven. Half of me wants to run out and jump into the first body of water I can find, while the other half just wants to curl up into a ball and nap. The faint droning of a voice on a speaker is audible. It sounds like some sort of outdoorsy hunting fishing podcast. Chase? Flynn's tall, leering form emerges from one of the doorways, a stack of envelopes in his hand. We stare at each other for a few seconds, as the reality of what we've done with each other is hanging pretty poignantly in the air. Hey. He exhales, his demeanor shifting. His raised shoulders give more lax, and his tail settles on the musty, carpeted floor. What? He looks back through one of the doorways beside him, then back to me, his scaled brow furrowed. For a moment, my mind blanks, and I'm not sure what I'm doing with my paws. It's really stuffy in here. Flynn looks at me questioningly. The only people who work here are reptiles, so we keep the habitat all dry and stuff. His gaze shifts back to the doorway again before returning to me. Is there something you want? I'm pretty busy. I clear my throat, crossing my arms over my chest. Yeah, I was hoping to get permission to film around City Hall and take a look at some of the records. What records were you looking to go through? Well, I don't know. Flynn stares at me with an indiscernible expression. I'm just looking for anything I can use in my report. So, you don't have a parcel number or a date or anything? You just want to, browse? Well, maybe you could point me in the right direction. You're the city clerk after all. Flynn lets out a raspy exhale, moving to take a seat in his swivel chair at the front desk, his tail coiling around the base. Alright, the reading room is off limits on account that the monsoon season took out a portion of its roof cover last year. I can set you up in the mail room with the microfilm on a computer for the time being. He grasps the edge of the desk, staring at the tips of his fingers. I need to check with the mayor to see what all you've got access to. Flynn's about to stand up again when another Gilla steps into the room. She's slightly overweight and decked out in khaki shorts with a matching outdoorsy button-up shirt. Despite being indoors, she dons a large sun hat, also khaki, with a vibrant floral bandana around the neck. This must be the mayor, Flynn's aunt. I thought I heard another voice in here. I catch wind of her perfume, a strong, sweet pea scent that seems to fill the room. Her slitted blue-green eyes focus on me. It's almost like she's sizing me up. Are you from the grant committee? I pause, quickly shake my head. No, sorry. She visibly seems to deflate, her brow lowering and her eyelids drooping to a half-lidded lull. Ah. I'm Chase, Flynn's friend. That's so? Another one then? She looks over towards Flynn, who's currently rubbing his temple. He quickly responds. An old friend, childhood. You've met Chase before, I'm pretty sure, or at least you've seen him around town. She seems to think for a moment before a look of realization comes to her. Oh, I almost didn't recognize you with that thing on your chin. I almost certainly remember you. I blink, reaching up and covering my goatee instinctively. You were the one paddling around with that red wolf fella. Leo, weren't you? Gay couple, right? I chuckled a bit sheepishly, nodding. Having spent the past 3 years at Pueblo, I'm not used to people talking about me like this as I once was. Yeah, sort of. I mean, yes. She exchanges a glance with Flynn, who's looking at a bit tense. Chase is doing a school project on the town and wants access to the records we've got on hand. He filled out a request form yet? No, he just wants to browse, I guess. Well, it's only public record stuff that I want to take a look at. You still have to go through the process. Usually the requests are just for a parcel at a time. What sort of school project is this for, Chase? Well, I'm a journalism major at the University of Pueblo. I have to create a documentary-style video report on something. I chose Echo. Ah, you aren't aiming to smear us in the general public then, are you? Her tone suggests she's joking, but she has that same intense look that Flynn has, where I can't really tell for sure. No, Mayor. You know, we have a grant application that we've been interested in putting out there that requires a video entry detailing the sites around town. Would you be interested in that sort of thing? Oh, well, maybe. I don't know. I guess I'll have to know more about the project. Honestly, I can't really imagine the sheer amount of sugarcoating that I'd need to muster to create a positive report about this place. Fill this out. Flynn is pushing a form across the desk my way. The mayor clears her throat. Chase, where it asks for lot parcel request, you can just put all inventory. Alright, will do. As I take a pen from Flynn and begin to write, I see him look up at his aunt. All inventory? Yes. Alright then. He huffs them idly. The podcasts on Flynn's computer speakers are going into detail about creating complex fishing nets and trappings. I'll leave you two boys to it then. Welcome back to Echo, Chase. It's good to be back. Flynn subtly rolls his eyes, turning back to his computer. The mayor just smiles before heading back into what I assume is her office. I finish up the form in silence, pushing it back towards Flynn. He squints at it for a moment before speaking. Any word from Leo? The topic change catches me off guard. I look up to see Flynn leaning in close, his voice lowered. Yeah, he believes the whole spending the night at Carl's story. Carl went along with it. I ended up telling him the whole truth though. I guess I just started feeling real shit about all this lying. Flynn leans back in his chair suddenly, clenching his eyes shut tight. He opens his mouth like he's about to say something, but merely shakes his head. Chase, you fucking realize that when this week is over, you just go back to college land? And I'm stuck here with the results of all your shitty choices? You know Carl as well as I do. He wouldn't go telling Leo to start drama. And anyway, he saw us, by the truck. Flynn's eyes open and he just stares at the ceiling for a long moment. Fuck it. Let's get your musky ass set up with a goddamn county login so you can get access to the GIS maps. He scoots back over towards his computer, beginning to type something in. I catch a glimpse of his desktop. Looks like some sort of waterfall surrounded by a lush evergreen forest. It's kind of blurry, like a smaller image stretched to fit the screen size. I also see a few transparent stock images, logos overlaid on top. We've got physical records, the real old ones, stored in the mailroom though. I wouldn't say the shit there is very browsable. Some religious historical society types came by 8 months ago and helped us archive a lot of it. They're all in the labeled manila folders along with the south wall. Flynn turns back to the computer, pecking at the keyboard. For a clerk, he's not remotely a fast typer. Oh damn, I forgot to ask for permission to film here. Flynn grunts. Permission granted! Go do that while I get this fucking thing working. Glancing back at the screen, I see incorrect password, 2 remaining entries before lockout, flash up. After looking at his keyboard, it takes me only a couple of seconds to figure out what's wrong. Flynn? What? He snaps at me and I can see his pointed teeth between his scaled lips for a moment. You have that caps lock on. Flynn pounds the caps lock key with some extra force before returning back to his typing. Thanks. Now fuck off for a bit. I stare at him and I can't help but feel a twisting sensation in my chest. I'm not sure if I expected him to treat me differently after what we did, but I definitely didn't think he'd treat me worse. I try to think of something to say to make this right, to make this not awkward as it seems to be getting. Yet the longer I sit there, the more uncomfortable he seems to get. I guess I'm literally leering at him like a creep right now. Fuck. I get up and head out, deciding keeping my mouth shut is the best course of action for the time being. The gravel parking lot makes it difficult to adequately line up the shots. Everything ends up looking slightly crooked. I know I can probably fix it all in post, but that's more work for me that I'm not looking forward to. Carl, meanwhile, has his ears glued to his phone. It looks like he found a pair of earbuds because he's got those in, too. Refocusing, I take stock of the footage I've got here so far. The midday sun means that my recordings are all pretty much well lit, but I can't help but think that a sunset would be more symbolic. Maybe I'll come back later. I don't know. My phone vibrates in my shorts. Grabbing it, I see I've got a new text message from Leo. With Jenna and TJ playing football. I'm assuming he means soccer, but I decide now isn't the time to press him on word choice. Sounds fun, filming with Carl and Flynn here. I slide my phone back into my pocket, unlocking the trunk of my car so that I can start putting away all this equipment. Quick response for someone playing soccer. Upon checking my phone, though, the message turns out to be from Carl. Get back to work, no texting. I look around the trunk hatch to see Carl's smirking muzzle, his chin buried in his hoodie. Stepping back behind the trunk, I began to text back. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. After hitting send, I set my phone down, beginning to lock up the camera and the neon orange University of Pueblo hard case I borrowed. Another message from Carl. That's, oh, I'm so sorry, Daddy, to you, boy. Jesus. Snickering, I text back. Don't play gay chicken with me. I will win. I finish packing up everything and shut the trunk, waiting for the next response. As if on cue, my phone vibrates once again. I also realize now that Flynn's standing at the City Hall entranceway, with his arms crossed, staring furrow-browed at the car. Why the fuck is Carl here, just sitting in the car? Grinning, I hold up my finger to him. I look over to the most recent message. I don't like chicken. I like cock, boy. I smirk, eliciting a raised brow from the Gilla. The hell are you two doing? I got shit to set up. You will not win this game, sir. Daddy, I told ya, boy. Don't make me spank you. Oh, he's fucking stoned off his rocker, ain't he? He ate too much of an edible this morning, apparently. Flynn looks at me, then back at Carl. Probably for the best he stays in the car, then. Come on. He turns, heading back inside. I follow, watching Carl smiling to himself before going back to his mobile game. Flynn leads me through the narrow hallways, the ceiling laden with visible old piping and walls covered in dents and scratches. Eventually, we turn into a colorful room that looks like a mix between an old post office and a kindergarten class. Alright, like I said, archive files are in the back, along the south wall. The computer's in the corner, logged into the county's GIS viewer, maps and shit, basically. He points to the cream-colored computer that must be from the early 2000s, by the look of the make, dust visible on the top of the tower. Oh, so like where the native burial grounds and that sort of thing are? Flynn crosses his arms, looking back down at me. Yeah, no, as far as I know, the Meseta tribe government hasn't put forth any sacred ground claims within the miles of Echo. Well, really? Really? Why's that? I don't have a whiff of a shit's worth of a clue or care. Go ask Jenna if you want to be all weird about it. I don't think she has much ties to her tribe. Yeah, well, it doesn't stop her from being a bitch about it whenever she sees fit. Flynn sucks in his cheeks, as if saying that left a bit of an unpleasant taste in his mouth. Flynn speaking less than kindly towards folks isn't anything new, but not usually about Jenna. He looks down at some papers in his hands, as if they were suddenly very interesting. Is this about what she said when you got Carl the lighter from the reservation? His slitted eyes flicked back up to me. His lips thinned. You thought that was bullshit too, right? Well, I think she was just still in, I don't know, den mother mode with regards to TJ after what you did. If you want to get everyone to talk again, you should just apologize. There's a pause in the conversation as cloud cover shades the light coming in from the window. It's not just about the lighter crap. She doesn't give a shit about me, and she really doesn't give a shit about Sydney. I blink. I'm still amazed at how much his name is being mentioned after all these years of silence on the subject, especially from Flynn. He catches my expression and grunts, the gilla resting the sides of his hips against the sorting counter. When he died, all she fussed about was how it affected TJ. Sid could rot for all she cared. That's not fair. We were kids and people react to all sort of trauma stuff differently. Maybe helping TJ is what kept her occupied. Oh yeah? Remember a few months before it happened, when all that shit was going on with Sid's dad? And fucking Jenna, all she did was try to shield TJ from all the negativity of the situation. She tried to help, but he was different. I don't know, fuck, we were just kids. No, she fucking hated Sydney. Carl hated Sydney. Leo hated Sydney. TJ would never fucking admit it, but he hated Sydney. And you hated Sydney. He looks at me in the eyes now. I'm quiet for a moment, trying to think of what to say. Flynn, meanwhile, just looks expectantly, seemingly waiting for me to blanch and try to defend myself. Sydney was an asshole. He raises his chin some, his crossed arms seeming to squeeze more tightly over his chest. Yeah, so am I. No, not like him. Nobody knew him like I did. You've said that, but that doesn't mean the crap he pulled on us, on TJ, was any way justified. I'm pretty sure he genuinely enjoyed watching people get hurt. Flynn stares slack-jawed before quickly gritting his teeth. He liked wrestling, he liked pirates, he liked pulpy action-adventure shit, but he did not like hurting people. TJ cried every day, no matter what. He could see a dead fly on a windowsill and start bawling. And you would all drop everything and come rushing to his aid, scorning the shit out of anybody who didn't. And we couldn't make jokes, we couldn't tease each other, we couldn't roughhouse, and we couldn't even fucking swear without TJ getting upset. It isn't like we could just hang out with someone else. This is Echo, and Leo is a fucking dead set on keeping the group together. Though now the group for Leo essentially consists of two members, your ass and his cock. I frown deeply. Before I can interject, he continues. When Sydney died, all you convinced yourself that he was a fucking monster kid so that it didn't have to hurt so much. I ain't gonna apologize. Fucking hell, they should. Flynn uncrosses his arms, staring some out the sole window of the cramped mailroom. The cloud cover lifts. I'll be at the front desk. If you take something, always put it back where you found it. He turns, making his way back down the narrow hallway. I'm left alone. Everything feels really quiet right now, a sort of weird solace amidst the shelves upon the shelves of Echo's history. I rub my face and muzzle, spinning a whisker as the previous conversation plays in my head and begins to fade like a passing dream. With a slow exhale, I turn and head over to the archives. They all seem to be categorized by numbers like 105-66009 or 107-21-001. I grab a random file on the shelf, 106-01-001. Flipping it open, I see a cluster of 15 or so papers and permits from a place called Adelaide's Thrift and Pawn. It sounds familiar, and it only takes me a little bit more pursuing to figure out why. Near the exit of Route 93 to Flint Road, there's this faded old shack of rotten wood. Growing up, all that was left of the sign front was Adelaide's Thrift. I think it's bulldozed over now, since I didn't see it on the drive in. According to these documents, Adelaide von Berg applied for and successfully obtained a business license and deed to the property in 1979. I'm guessing these folders correspond to a piece of property with an echo, or a parcel. That helps some, but I'm still not exactly sure where to look. I put the file away and move over towards the computer Flynn got ready for me. The screen displays an aerial photograph of Echo with little polygons drawn over it like a bizarre checkboard map. Clicking on one, nothing happens. I click again, and the pointer turns into an hourglass, the program stating that it's not responding. Damn it. As the hourglass rolls on the screen, I think I hear the front door open down the hall. At first, I wonder if it's Carl, but then a voice speaks that I don't recognize, then Flynn's. I can only make out a little of what he says. That's what they told you at the county office? You could have come here. The hourglass spins. The unincorporation, it shouldn't affect developers who... Finally, a little window pops up, listing owner, address, parcel numbers, links to building plans, and other fields. Slow as hell, but this is actually kind of neat, I guess. Curious, I scroll over to the location of my old house and click. This time, it reacts a little faster. The complaint forms are physical, not much of an online presence at. It's currently listing and as abandoned and condemned. It looks like the people my parents sold it to ditched it rather quickly. I move back towards the archive, picking up my old house's corresponding file and setting it down on the counter. Opening it, I see weathered floor plans of my old house dating back to 1986. Nothing here could remotely be considered of interest in my project, however. I put the files back where I found it. As I hear the increasingly quiet rasp of Flynn's voice in the other room, I realize he's probably too busy to hold my hand with regards to where to look. Especially after the previous conversation, it might be best to just give him some space. I stare at the aerial display on the computer monitor, trying to figure out where to start looking. Let's go the mine. There's something about the old mine that feels off to me. Unlike pretty much every locale on Echo, the mine was the one place we absolutely did not play. Sydney tried to make one of our scavenger hunts objectives down in there once, but TJ told his mom about it, and that was the end of that. After looking up the parcel number, I retrieved the corresponding file and laid it out on the mail counter. This one has an archive notice attached to the front. I guess my hunch might be right. Opening the file, the first thing I note is that there is a seriously large amount of documents here, and even a laminated old photo. That's a hell of a lot more veteran than it is these days. Might have something to do with the damming they did up north in the 50s. I'm guessing the CM 1915 is referring to the year the photo was taken. Within the folder itself, many of the documents seem to be legal in nature, including documentation about a lawsuit of some sort. The one on top seems to relate to that tourism program Echo tried a decade ago. There's a few papers about a historical heritage grant and the installation of a bench and 2 lamps outside the mine's entrance. There's even reference to a large placard installed into the side of the rock face outside, but I don't remember seeing that. Following this, there's another folder within that contains some condemned notices and squatter evictions dating 1970 to 1975. Said folder also notes a work order for the installation of rebars in the mine's front to prevent entry in 1976. Next, there's an actual lawsuit documentation itself. The lawsuit contributed in part to the official closing of the mine during the War of 1942. The working conditions were abysmal, and the owners of the mines were also heavily involved in town government, so there were corruption charges. The Danica mine, also known as the CSCG mine, was the most in-demand employer in the northern portion of the state for decades. This was in large part due to the management by the owners, but rather the natural conditions of the mine itself. The structure of the bedrock kept cave-ins unlikely, and its chemical composition kept the temperature stable and somewhat breathable. Flooding was a minor concern due to the low water table of the region. In other mines within the state, miners may have been expected to stand in 2 feet of dirty water in 40-degree weather. All the while, the looming threat of cave-ins being a very real threat, amplified with every strike of the sledgehammer. Yet even still, the mine managed to have one of the highest casualty rates for its workers in all of the Southwest. The suit argues that this was all due to severe negligence by the owner, Gregory Briggs. Miners were required to buy their own tools, including candles, sledges, picks, stakes, and even the dynamite. Their wages, however, were of such little amount that many miners may have been forced to choose between having these tools and their family being able to eat that week. Many chose the latter, as most men who moved to Echo did so with the explicit purpose of being able to provide for said families. Briggs operated the mine under constant fear of worker unionization. To assuage this, he hired an incredibly nationally diverse assortment of workers. His rationale, though denied in court, was to ensure that no group of workers spoke the same language, thus reducing the chance of collaboration for better working conditions or wages. This preventative action was particularly heinous due to the nature of the work itself. Communication was crucial, especially in low light conditions of the lower depths. Despite the language barrier, miners were expected to coordinate dangerous group mining procedures. For example, for standard ore extraction, one miner would hold a spike in the mine wall while another miner swung the sledge towards the spike. With light sources being scarce, this meant that the risk of striking the other miner with the sledge was a constant risk, and something that occurred with some frequency. Many miners were crippled from blows to the paws or arms, and then once fired, were unable to support their families. This led to several notable starvation incidents within the town. The lawsuit documents also include reference to a brief riot in 1915 where a grisly murder took place within the mines itself. I make sure to write summaries of all this information down on a blank sheet of printer paper before putting everything back. This is the sort of crap that makes me glad I live in the age I do now. I don't think I'd make a very good miner. Alright, that's that, I guess. After finding the parcel number on the GIS thing, I can't seem to find the corresponding file to do it. It's like it doesn't exist in any records here. Or it might just be misplaced. I'm going to go with a second theory. Maybe I'll just ask Flynn about it later. City Hall has a lot of history. I assume most of it is really old stuff that isn't on file, but I'll be curious to see what's there regardless. After looking up the parcel number, I retrieved the corresponding file and lay it on the mail counter. This one has an archive notice attached to the front. That's good. Hopefully that means that there's supplemental information in here. Unfortunately, upon opening the file, I see that there isn't many documents. There is, however, a marked photo of some sort wedged between the folder edges. Whoa. Is that really the date of the origin on the top right corner? This photo of these guys was taken at the City Hall 100 years ago. I wonder who those could be. I look back down at the folder, finding a caption note for the image. Sheriff William Adler left, and Winsdale researcher Clifford Tibbets at the town hall meeting to discuss Echo Meseta tribe relations. Adler. I just realized now that that's Janice's last name. It must be a distant relative of hers. The rest of the documents in the folder just seem to consist mostly of proposed extensions and use changes for the buildings. A lot of them didn't pan out. There's a city government roster here though, and it lists the historical election results for the town going back to the early 20th century. Surprisingly, Flynn and his aunt aren't the only Moores I see on this list. It looks like the Moore family had been involved in the public office in some capacity as far back as the 1914s. Which is doubtedly surprising, noting the prejudice against reptiles that was pretty heavy back then. There's this whole negative stereotype about them being evil and controlling the government that persists even to today. Evil lizard people controlling the government. So it's pretty weird that a family like the Moores managed to keep getting elected back when the ignorance levels were much higher. I'll make note to ask Flynn about it as sensitively as possible. I go ahead and put everything back into the folder before returning it to the shelf. So what's next? Carl's mansion. I know enough about Carl's family to know that this house is seriously old. His great-great something and another is the town's founder after all. The place had been seriously modernized into a more stucco adobe style, but there's some history beneath all that. Growing up, Carl overheard all this and started thinking the place was haunted. It freaked him out pretty badly. So much so, his parents basically begged me to have sleepovers with him during the weekends, and even on some weekdays. Not that I minded, of course. Carl had all the video game consoles that were out, and his parents bought him M-rated games. I got to stay up late with his giant TV, blowing up aliens and running over hookers. I remember he started to become less afraid as time went on, and his parents stopped asking me to come over as much. So of course, shitbag younger me told Carl a bunch of stories about a ghost bride who I said I saw standing outside his house at midnight. And that's how I got to spend my whole 5th grade summer vacation living at Carl's place. After looking up the parcel number, I retrieved the corresponding file and laid it out on the mail counter. This one has an archive notice attached to the front. That's pretty surprising on account that it's a residential lot. Opening the folder, a photo placed in front of all the documents immediately catches my attention. Wow. A part of my mind immediately flashes back to Leo, but even he wasn't anywhere close to being this defined. I guess life in the early 20th century will do that to you. I should probably read the caption note for this that was attached. Sheriff William Adler rests after surviving the partial collapse of the Hendricks Castle. The Hendricks Castle? Below the note are some rather old, rudimentary building plans, crumbling at the edges. The penmanship is all a weird cursive and I can't read it. It does look like Carl's house, but much, much larger. What follows are a series of deed transfers from various members of the Hendricks family and eventually more modern building plans. There's even a cutout from a magazine, Southwestern Modern, which shows off the kitchen space back when it was first redesigned. I notice something wedged in the back, a beige piece of paper that doesn't look like anything else in here. A poem? Why would this be in here? Embrace these lands, Boyk. As the black takes the sky, hot turns to cold. The safety of ignorance from the specters of the day. Shut their eyes, they wail, for the dark blanket, and to save them from a hell. And the blonde tarantula pulls itself from the depths, wrought within and without, in search of a suitor who will not live past the vehemence of its love. I flip over the poem and set it down on the counter. On the other side is a notice of death for reference in an estate transfer. It's for a James Hendricks who passed away in 1913. The cause of death is listed as poison infection, Therasocidae tarantula. This is pretty unsettling. I didn't think tarantulas were poisonous. I mean, I know they aren't because I fear searched that information online one night after seeing one on my back porch at 3 a.m. I guess that poem was some sort of informal epitaph for this guy. Regardless, it's a shitty way to die. I slide the poem's death note back into the folder and make note of it for the project. I think that's all the parcels, so I place the folder back into its slot on the south wall. As I turn around, I see the mayor standing in the doorway. She's peering at me quizzically. A little startled, I straighten up. Oh, hi, Mayor. I was just finishing up. She's watching me speak, like staring at my mouth, not my eyes. It's honestly freaking me out a little. She doesn't respond. Mayor? Make sure you put everything back where you found it. Oh, yeah, don't worry, I did that already. Did you now? She steps into the room and picks up the folder from the edge of the counter. I recognize it as the one from the abandoned mines. Oh god, yeah, I forgot that one, sorry. She stands there with the folder held out, waiting for me. I quickly move and take the folder. I try to ignore the hard stare I feel on my back as I walk to the archive wall. Far left end, second cubby from the top. Oh, thank you, I didn't... Looks like Flynn's about ready to take off. You gonna give him some company? The way she phrases that makes me reconsider a hasty response. Sure, I can hang out with him and his roommate. You have a boy in your car. I blink. I have a Carl in my car, yes. He wanted to hang back while I did all the work. I feign a chuckle, though not very well. I've never been good at that whole smiling with your eyes thing. Carl Hendricks? Yes. Have a good rest of your evening, Chase. Thank you, Mayor. You too. She moves on down the hall, and after a moment, I follow suit to meet up with Flynn at the front desk. Dude, that's skeevy. After that, she just walked back to her office and shut the door, like almost slamming it. Maybe she's not a fan of you queer types. Carl puts on a southern drawl for that last bit. I step out of the car and pop the trunk, moving to gather up my equipment. The sun is starting to get pretty low at this point. There's not really any tall mountains to the east, so Echo's sunset tends to last a while. Maybe, but she seems alright with Flynn. Carl follows suit, though his eyes are still glued to his phone. I can't get over this whole, there's a boy in your car, bit. Yeah, she seemed kinda, I don't know, weirded out with me or something. But she wasn't like that when we met. She was pretty cordial then. As I shut the trunk, I spy Flynn's truck parked behind the house, as well as what looks like a faded yellow moped. I'm assuming that one is his roommate's. Huh. The Ram shrugs. You're kind of weird. Maybe you did that staring thing you do sometimes. I blink. The what? Never mind, man. I frown. Carl looks up from his phone long enough to catch my expression. I'm just kidding. Just making fun of Flynn's whole dressing you down back at the river. Carl smirks. His eyes are no longer glazed over, and it actually feels like he's looking at me rather than 1,000 miles away. We make our way up to the front door, Carl tapping away at his screen. Hard to imagine my house was even bigger back in the day, though. My parents already have more rooms than they know what to do with. Like, we've got 3 spare bedrooms, right? But we never had any guests or anything, so they don't get used and it just gathers dust and stuff. Do your parents make you clean them? Carl rolls his shoulders idly, swiping his hooves upon the rough palm fiber floor welcome mat. Sometimes. Knowing Carl, that means pretty much never. Once inside, the familiar, hot, stuffy climate hits like a wool blanket thrown over me. What sounds like some sort of lo-fi hip-hop is playing in the background from what I assume is Daxton's room. The interior is dimly lit with the exception of a bright, white light coming from the ajar fridge. Daxton stands next to it, holding a block of pale cheese. Is this what you need? The salamander seems to be peering at us expectantly. No? He raises the brow ridge, craning his neck to look past us. Talking to Flynn. The Gilla's large self steps out from the laundry room beside us, looking at Daxton. Oh, sorry. Carl gives me a sidelong smirk. That's the provolone. The recipe needs Havarti. Flynn steps past us without much acknowledgement, moving to the kitchen beside Daxton. We have a block of Havarti, but it's in the freezer. There's this thing called a defrost setting on the microwave. Yeah, but you left the fish you caught on top of it. The pack is sealed. That shouldn't matter. The whole freezer kind of reeks. Like I said, the package is sealed. That shouldn't matter. With a shrug, to Carl, I move in and set my equipment down next to the kitchen island. I take a seat on one of the wicker-topped bar stools. Carl lingers in the doorway a bit before moving to sit on the stool next to mine. Flynn wordlessly goes to the fridge and grabs 2 bottles of light beer, popping the tops and setting them down in front of us. Thanks. I'm not 21 yet, legally, you know. Flynn shrugs uncaringly before getting a beer for himself. Looking around, the countertops are pretty free of clutter beyond some Meseta Community College letters and a heavily used black notebook. The notebook is labeled World Building and Fictional History 204. A few water stains have shriveled the edges of the pages. Daxton places the provolone back into the fridge and places the allegedly fishy Havarti on a plastic cutting board. Meanwhile, Flynn is now at the sink, washing vegetables. Daxton grabs a small knife and finally glances back at me. Welcome back, Chase. I wave a bit limp-wristedly. Hey. He smiles, then shifts his gaze to Carl. The Ram looks up from his phone a little apprehensively. And hey, I've seen you before, but I forgot your name. Sam something? Carl. He answers, his voice quiet. Oh. Well, good to meet you. Usually you're kind of in and out of here real quick, like when you do come by. Carl shrugs. Yeah, same. The Ram's gaze flicks back to his phone, Carl typing something. Daxton frowns slightly before shifting his focus back to the cheese cutting. Looking over, it looks like he's texting. The contents of said message being XJKHKJHS HJKHS HJKHJUIKFDSPOEIOPEJSJDSESERFSDFFFG. Hey, Carl. Flynn looks over his shoulder, scrubbing at what looks like a cucumber. You got your outfit picked out for the interview on Saturday? Yup. Wait, what? Carl, you have a job interview? Yup. I find myself smiling a bit. Carl didn't tell me about this at all. I'm surprised he didn't mention it earlier. That's great. Where at? Carl stops typing, his lips pulled a bit tighter around the edges of his muzzle. It's at Peyton Print and Design. I'll be like printing copies and making people posters. Oh, the print shop by the mall? I know it. What do they pay? Minimum wage. Not that it matters, though. Daxton looks slightly confused. I turn to him. Carl's parents are pretty well off. Flynn stops what he's doing, going to the fridge and taking out a box of strawberry popsicles. He drops it down on the counter beside Daxton, the salamander staring some, looking to Flynn, then to the box. Flynn points to the Hen's ice cream label above a logo of a weather vane with a chicken on it. Carl's parents' company. Daxton lets out an astonished huff, looking for some sign of fib on Flynn's muzzle. No way! Way, I'm the ice cream boy. Daxton blinks, seeming to look at Carl in a new light. That's really cool! Carl looks sidelong, then back at Daxton. Glad you think so, I guess. Flynn takes the popsicles back into the freezer, returning his attention to the sink. Just make sure that the clothes you got all fucking fit right. Can't remember the last time I saw you dressed up. It fits, dude. My parents drag me to all sorts of black tie event stuff where I have to stand around and lie about my career goals. You haven't done that in ages. I went to a charity gala thing 2 years ago. You mean 20 pounds ago. Most of it is muscle. I'm not calling you fat lard ass. I'm saying that when it comes time for the interview and you come in with a hoodie and cargo pants, they're gonna think you don't give a fuck. I mean, I kinda don't, you know. What the fuck you don't? You're really looking forward to disappointing the shit out of your folks again? They're used to it. Jesus fucking Christ. Daxton and I exchange an awkward glance. I'm half tempted to follow Carl's lead and start pretend texting. You worked at the freight warehouse for years and were miserable. Can't blame me for not looking forward to the same sort of thing. Carl feigns a raspy chuckle, though by the jittering of his hooves against the bar stool, it's apparent he's tense. And now I have my own house. I see his slitted gaze shift briefly to Daxton, who looks like he's concentrating very hard on the cheese cutting. Mostly, and printed design that's basically working with all the same computer shit you do for most of your art crap. Seeming to note an opportunity to diffuse, Daxton chimes in. You're an artist, Carl? Shit, by like, the loosest definition of the term, I guess. Flynn just rubs his temple some, shifting his attention back to the cooking. He places the freshly washed vegetables into the metal pot on the stove with one of the steamer lids things on top. What kind of art? You, don't seem like the oil-based, pastoral type. Carl blinks. I hear Flynn grunt derisively, then clicking on the stove top audibly as he turns the nozzle for the gas. His heavy tail flicks behind him, slightly slapping the floor. I realize he's trying to get my attention, his eyes meeting mine, then moving to Daxton, and finally flicking to a textbook by the dishwasher. Art History 101, Historical Perspectives and Fundamentals. Glancing back, I think I see the corner of Flynn's mouth twitch up at me before he turns back around to the pot of vegetables. It's still kind of weird seeing Flynn in a work outfit all the time. In high school, he was more of a jeans and jacket kind of guy. A southwestern rockabilly who didn't like rock and roll. His work slacks are pretty baggy and definitely hide the definition of his legs. Flynn's got a V-shaped physique through and through, narrow calves, butt thicker thighs, and a sizable rump. When he bends forward a little, I can see the outline of it all. The lewd side of my mind is starting to wonder if he's doing it on purpose. But why would he, after what he said this morning? Pastorals? I'm not very good with backgrounds or anything. Portraiture, then? Very snazzy stuff, that. The salamander smiles at Carl, showing his rounded cheeks. Carl just looks at him confused. I decide now's the time to interject and spare Carl from Daxton's entry-level college art class inquiries. Carl draws pop culture character stuff mainly, I think. I haven't really checked out his portfolio in a while. Superheroes, comics, and that sort of thing. It's really good stuff. It's not. He pauses, shifting his phone in his paws akin to rolling putty. Since superhero movies became really popular, everyone draws that stuff now, mostly better than me. It's kind of a dead-end style, I guess. Can't make any money from anything I make. Carl sounds more like he's quoting something rather than stating an actual opinion. Daxton raises a brow, nodding in an acknowledgement. There's a pause, the only sound the bubbling of boiling water and Daxton's knife hitting the plastic cutting board. Well, not if you draw them with their clothes off. The salamander tries to put on his most innocent face. That lasts for about 3 seconds before breaking into a wiry smile at Carl's groaning, the ram taking a long swig of his beer. He's grinning too now, though. Everyone online tells me that. I don't know, man. Every time I try to draw Chaos Wolverina's tits, they just kind of look like big-ass furry eyes, stuck in her chest. Daxton laughs, and I find myself jittering a bit too. You could try drawing guys instead if women are giving you too much trouble. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Chase? I don't like superhero stuff that much. Well, I won't judge you if you did, Carl. I've written a few awkward sex scenes in my day. You're a writer? That I am, at least I'm trying to be. I'm taking creative writing courses at Mesa to get better. The folks really wanted me to go into marketing like them, but I'm really not into it. That's lucky. I'm having to go into debt, so I'm not sure I'm that lucky. Hopefully, one of the books I'm working on sells well. Most people don't really read these days. The salamander places the cut-up cheese upon the slices of rye bread, then putting the bread on the cooking tray, sighing as he looks at Flynn. Not everyone can suffice off coming home from work and staring at the wall for hours, like you, Flynn. Some people like a degree of mental input. Yeah? What? Flynn flicks the stove top off, his eyes loll, and his brow ridge furrowed. Daxton passes him the tray of rye and Havarti, sliding it into the oven. You call the shit you write mental input? The Gillo stops what he's doing, squinting at Daxton. Did you defrost the Havarti, or did you seriously just spend the past 15 minutes cutting it into frozen blocks of cheese? This side of the house is like an oven with the Havestat running like it is. The cheese warmed up on its own after a while at room temperature. Flynn throws up his hands, visibly exasperated. It wouldn't have taken you 15 damn minutes to cut a few slices of cheese if you defrosted it. Are you in a rush or something? What do you mean about him staring at the wall for hours? The salamander looks standoffish now, his arms crossed. My question seems to be getting ignored. Might be. Daxton, what sort of stuff do you write? Surprisingly, Carl's the one to butt in this time. Daxton turns, getting out some plates. Mainly science fiction and fantasy. You know Adastra, right? Carl takes another drink of beer, rubbing his beard in thought. Sort of. I don't really watch it myself. It's that space exploration show from the 60s with the sexy aliens. The sexy wolf aliens. Daxton snaps his fingers. Yes, that's the one. People draw a lot of porn of them. They sure do. I'm aware. Anyway, I used to watch it a lot with my little brother growing up. I got into the whole peace in the cosmos through science thing, something fierce. The stories for each episode were based on real science. The salamander finishes setting out the plates, bumping his fists together and smiling a bit sheepishly. I'm taking a few physics and engineering courses at Mesa to try and better understand it all for my own writing. Makes sense. I also really like the whole diplomacy part. The ultimate goal of all the first contacts was peace and learning. You don't really see that much anymore. Yup. Like, that one episode from season 6 from Frontier is like a really good example of that, and it really inspires a lot of what I'm writing in my story. My phone vibrates in my pocket. A message from Leo. Hey, you're not at the motel? A sort of sinking feeling takes a hold in my chest. I can feel Flynn looking at me from over the counter as I type my reply. With Carl, Daxton, and Flynn about to eat dinner. When I look back up, Daxton is still chatting away with Carl about the Adastra episode, but I'm not really paying attention anymore. He's serving up the steamed vegetables and the fancy cheese bread fresh from the oven. The bread looks a little burnt around the edges, but maybe it's supposed to be that way. Of course you are. My fingers reflexively squeeze tighter on the phone. Flynn quietly walks around the corner, stepping behind me to look over my shoulder. At first, I think he's going to say something, but he doesn't. He's silent. With a sharp exhale, I begin to type my reply. We can all hang out tomorrow. Found some interesting stuff for my project at City Hall. Flynn makes a noise, though I can't really tell whether it's encouragement or disapproval. Need to talk to you one-on-one. I reply. What about? Leo's response is almost instantaneous. You know exactly what. At this point, I realize Carl's looking over at my screen as well. I'd call him and Flynn both out on it for being rude for this any other time. Daxton, meanwhile, just looks at us with a concerned expression on his face. What's up? Don't worry about it. Carl and Flynn both look at me expectantly as my thumb hovers over the reply button. Should I even respond at this point? I have no clue what he would have found out about Flynn and I if that were truly what he means. Leo's never really been good at getting his point across through text. He failed many an English class growing up. He always preferred to talk face to face, so maybe if I can be convincing enough in person, he won't be so worried. Or maybe I should just tell him the fucking truth. I hate this. I'm not even sure I did anything wrong, but I can't help but feel like garbage. And now my pseudo-infidelity lying game is becoming a spectacle. I decide I might as well respond with at least a somewhat true response now. No? I shove my phone back into my pocket and Flynn steps back. This is so fucking stupid. Carl just looks at Flynn with a flat expression. What? Carl shrugs. Like I said to Chase earlier, man, I won't say anything. Daxton quietly chews on his very crunchy cheese bread, looking at us from the other side of the counter. Drama? Yup. He moves from my side to back over to the kitchen island, grabbing his plate of food and taking a big mouthful of broccoli. You all want to watch Adastra? The salamander smiles awkwardly, gesturing to the small living room area. I'm down. Carl holds onto his beer before taking a swig. Chase? Flynn? I sigh. Usually TV is a bit too passive for me when I'm trying to get my mind off stuff. Most often, I turn to video games instead. Still, Daxton seems pretty passionate about all this. I guess it can't hurt. Sure, though all I've ever seen of it are a few of the movies, I think. Oh, which ones? The one with all the lens flare and chrome? Daxton looks as if a bad taste just settled on his palate. Ugh, the Ptolemy brothers directed those ones. They tried way too hard to make it edgy and action-packed. Completely ignored proper characterization. Like Lieutenant Gamokra firing the plasma emitter at the Forcebian ambassador. She's completely non-violent in the original series. She took a vow of peaceful resolution following the violence cascade that destroyed her homeworld in the first season. But the writers just thought it would look cool in the trailers that they just showed her disintegrating a guy while screaming her head off. I really like the thought-provoking philosophical stuff, not the protagonist running around killing people. Daxton huffs, rubbing his fists against the smooth brow. I'm not sure exactly how to respond. Yeah, that's pretty not great when that happens. I like the space battles, though. Of course, they were made to appeal to a casual audience. I blink. Daxton quickly holds up his hands, his eyes widening. Oh, I didn't mean that as an insult or anything. No offense taken. I offer him a reassuring nod, taking a bite of the steamed vegetables. They certainly taste fresh. Flynn must have gotten these at Peyton. Daxton's stuck having to deal with us filthy casuals tonight. Again, sorry, that's not what I meant. No, I know what you mean. You dig it because you grew up with the original shit, and you have all sorts of fuzzy feelings about it. I'm actually kind of surprised to hear Flynn chime in. Yeah, I mean, looking back, the original series is pretty dumb and cheesy. But it wasn't for you when you were a kid, or the tit-dirts who watched it back in the 60s. Yeah, dude, back when we were kids, Leo's dad would get us a bunch of random VHS tapes from the thrift shop in Colville every now and then. Like really dumb kung fu movies, or straight-to-video slasher flicks. It didn't even matter that they were R-rated. Sometimes on summer nights, we'd gather at Leo's place and watch a bunch of them until almost morning. They were all terrible. It was great. I find myself smiling a bit. I'm almost forgotten about that. Oh geez, Flynn would always get super into them. He would yell at the screen every time the character did something stupid. Carl chuckled into his paw, grinning toothily at the Gila. Oh man, you get so butthurt, you'd start stomping around and slamming Leo's cabinets until you got in trouble. Flynn looks off to the side. If the lizards could blush, I'm almost certain he'd be doing it now. Whenever there was someone with a gun on the screen, they never had any trigger discipline and completely held their guns wrong. And every time, every movie, someone was being chased by some killer or whatever, they completely forgot how to run. Oh yeah, you kept on counting how many times everyone tripped. You had a little notepad with your trip tally. Daxton looks absolutely tickled by this revelation about Flynn. That sounds hilarious. I wish I had friends like you growing up so I could have done that sort of thing. Flynn waves dismissively. It was alright. I remember we could never do it when TJ was around. Satanic propaganda and all that, right? We would have been fine if we eased him into it. We could start him off with Bloodfire Babes of Babylon. Carl nods sagely, sipping a last bit of his beer before getting up to retrieve another from the fridge. So, Flynn, you wanna... Yeah, maybe. Daxton looks pretty elated. The amphibian's slightly chubby cheeks puff out some as he grins. I know some of the really schlocky episodes from the first seasons of the original series. I'll put those on. Sounds good, dude. Daxton sets his plate down, fast walking to the TV in the living room. After a moment, Carl looks over at me. Nerd alert. Flynn goes to slide his now empty plate into the sink, slapping Carl on the back of his head as he passes. Fucking rich coming from you, neckbeard ass. Hey, I mean it endearingly. Across the room, Daxton waves at us. Hey, I think I got it. The internet is kind of slow out here because it's satellite, but it's sufficient. Flynn meanders on over, lounging on a love seat on the left side of the living room. His tall stature results in his legs hanging far over the edge, the lizard scratching his exposed chest with a yawn. He cranes his long neck to look back at me and Carl. You two tits gonna sit all the way back there? Hold on, I'm coming. Carl gives me a little nudge and we follow suit, beers and grasps. Looking at Flynn now, I realize that part of me wishes I could go over there and lay beside him. More practically, I sit in the recliner in the center of the room, while Carl and Dax take the other sofa. Okay, so in this episode, Captain Amicus lands on the planet in the year 1968. He's looking for technology to stop an uprising in the future, but... Dax, shut up. No spoilers, dude. Alright, fine. Captain Amicus, the slime woman, they're in the engine room. This leaves me no choice, Cadet. Activate self-destruct protocol, Baker 1-9er. But Captain... There's no time to debate. Get to the escape pods. Captain, the test results just came in. They aren't slime woman. They're cell woman. They're multiplying as a result of some sort of cancer-like phenomenon. By God, Cadet, this changes everything. Deactivate self-destruct protocol. If these are cells, then our ship is one sick patient. Cadet, flood engineering with radiation, pulses at 3-second intervals. Maximum output. I still don't understand why the hell cell women have tits. Why are they women in the first place? Or why all the lady officers don't wear pants. Carl takes another glug of the beer, this being his third so far from my count. I said I was going to show you the bad ones, guys. Daxton looks a bit defensive, leaning forward on the edge of his seat, his plump tail wrapping around the armrest. Carl idly chucks a throw pillow at the salamander. I'm not complaining, dude. He laughs a little and Dax eases, chucking it back at him with a bit more force. Carl takes the blow like a champ, in regards that he doesn't even react beyond smiling goofily. It's surprising to see Carl comfortable like this around a stranger. I can't help but feel kinda happy he can still come out of his shell every now and then. It's fucking dumb. How does anyone take this shit seriously? They don't. We certainly aren't. I glance over towards Flynn, who's digging in his pocket for his phone. He taps the unlock button, squinting at the bright screen. The black and orange scales on his face seem to glow silver and yellow in the light. I find myself leaning forward a little, trying to read the tiny text on the screen. It takes me a moment to realize that Flynn isn't looking at the screen anymore. He's looking at me. He huffs, moving the screen away from my view before beginning to text something. Is it... No, it's not Leo. Flynn stares at his phone some, a sort of expectant expression upon his muzzle. Hey, I don't mean to be all prying and such, but who's Leo? Daxton seems to be asking me this. My ex. Flynn glances back for a moment, though saying nothing. Oh, Leo's a guy? Yep. Cool. The salamander frowns in an acknowledging fashion, nodding his head some before refocusing his attention back on the TV. Captain Amicus is in the midst of being attacked by the slime woman. Even with the prosthetics and lighting, I can tell that all the slime women are actually just a bunch of amphibians in green body paint. Flynn's phone vibrates again. He taps at it, clearly not really much of a fast texter. After finishing his text, he hastily shoves the phone back into his pocket. I'm heading out. He pushes himself up the couch, unruffling his shirt before meandering over towards a bowl on the kitchen to get his truck keys. Wait, what? Aw, come on, slithead. Daxton briefly smirks at Carl's term before seconding. Yeah, this is actually pretty fun. Where are you going? Out. You should get back to the motel before the others start bitching. I feel my face grow hot. My fists start to clench. Okay, maybe drop the mysterious act, asshole. Flynn just heads off to the front door, swatting his tail against the kitchen island and flicking me off as he exits. Flynn! He's out the door without further comment, and I can hear the chirping sound from his truck outside as he unlocks it. Fucking moody, right? Think something up with him? Carl shakes his head. Nah, he's just trying to look cool. It isn't working. Dude gets uncomfortable with casual social stuff, I think. He's 25 years old. This is bullshit. I wish he'd just be straight with me. Daxton snickers, though quickly shakes his head, stifling it. What? If he was being straight with you, you wouldn't be getting so pissed about this, I think. Straight, as in you two not macking on each. I get it. I sigh, letting myself sink back into the suede fabric of my chair. It automatically reclines for me the more pressure I put upon it. I'm starting to regret Carl finding out about all this. If he didn't know, it wouldn't be so much of a thing. It would have been easier to just pretend it never even happened in the first place. And I wouldn't even have to deal with lying to the guy I loved for most of my teenage life. I'm gonna play again, if that's alright. I'm staring at the ceiling now, but I can feel them both looking at me. Go ahead, I'm just gonna close my eyes for a little while, okay? Gotcha, dude. Well, we'll wake you if something cool happens. So, we'll wake you in the morning. Gonna get a beer. Be right back. I shut my eyes and hear the trademark Adastra music resume. A large paw gently pats my shoulder, followed by an audible hoof clops in the kitchen floor behind me. And that's actually where I'm gonna leave it for now. Because I actually don't have that much time right now. But yeah, more Flynn interaction with a little smattering of Carl, and now the salamander whose name Daxton. I almost forgot his name. But yeah, Leo's up to his usual obsessive, controlling self, and I guess that doesn't change regardless of what route you pick. Or does it? Hintity hint hint. Anyways, thank you for listening, and we'll try to continue this maybe tomorrow. Although that's New Year's Day from the time I'm recording this. So maybe next week. Maybe the weekend. We'll see. But yes, thank you for listening, and bye-bye.